All right, Lance, welcome to Sasquatch Theory, and it's a pleasure to finally have you on the show. How are you doing today?
Well, I'm doing great. It's so nice to be on your show, and I've been looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Lance. Well, if you would, could you tell me about your encounters and experiences and kind of some background on where this all took place?
Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll get into mine, and then I can get into some of my brothers because this happened, as we were growing up in the state parks, and then my brother Lane had one outside of where we lived in Watonga, Oklahoma. Mine really wasn't, I would say, horrific or anything like that. I was about 10 years old, and we lived out in southeast Oklahoma, which it would be about 5 miles outside of a little town called Braggs. And Braggs, Oklahoma, is very close to Greenleaf State Park, a few miles away. And
Mm.
Braggs is also in the news some time back because a lot of the Hurricane Katrina folks went over there and they built a lot of these portable buildings for them over there to house them during that crisis. So when I was 10, we lived what we call out in the sand hills. And I remember being the oldest brother, I had chores to do, and we had a garden. And this would have been summertime. And I was in the garden, which was a ways from the house. It was down the end of the drive, which is not too far, but as a kid, it's kind of far away. And I was on a bike, and so it was so far away, I didn't want to walk. So I got on my bike and I went there, and I was supposed to put some straw on the strawberries. And I had to have it done before my dad got home, which was close to dark. And so the way the garden is situated, the back of the garden, which was quite huge, was up against the woods. And it's the back of where the woods began had small saplings, and then it got into big trees the deeper in the woods that you saw or could see. So I'm doing the strawberries by myself, and I was picking up these just stacks of hay and sprinkling them like my dad showed me. And as I get toward the back of the garden, it was, as many people have noted many, many, many times on my show and your show and many other shows, is that there's just the silence is deafening. You notice something is not right. You can't put your finger on it, but you know that it's different. And so I'm there working, and then I just noticed everything was so quiet. I didn't hear the whippoorwills, which is very prevalent during the summertime, and the birds and everything as the sun is going down. And it was just silence. And it was so much so that I just kind of stopped and started looking around like, that is strange. It's very odd. And so I remember actually standing up and just stopping and looking around like, it just felt just a different vibe. And I'm looking around and I don't see anything. I don't really hear anything, but I just, there's nothing chirping, no birds, nothing. And then something told me the way the sun, I was facing west, and the sun would have been just a little bit to my right because it was setting, it was starting to not be in my eyes anymore, especially if I squatted down. So something told me to squat down and look into the woods, which was a bit darker and would block the sun, the setting sun. And I squatted down and I'm just sitting there and I'm just kind of looking. I'm looking out into the trees a bit more. And right in front of me, about, I would say 25 yards, 20 yards, I could see the silhouette. It was quite wide and it was all black. I could see like a head outline. I could see like shoulders, and I could see the gap between the uh, the body and to the upper bicep area. I could see that gap there. It wasn't swaying or anything like this. It didn't make any growls. I couldn't smell anything, but it was just there. And I was kind of moving myself, trying to make adjustments. It's like, am I looking what I'm looking at? Am I seeing that? Is that a stump? What is that? And it was way too big just to be a stump. I could clearly see the silhouette outline, the space between the body and the bicipital area. I could see kind of a waist, but then when it got down to the thigh waist area, it just kind of disappeared because we had high grass that in that thicket. And so I looked at that and I was back and forth, and just something inside me said, "You need to leave." And that's when I realized I got a little scared. I wasn't scared up to that point. Then I thought, something's not right. So I started backing up. I just dropped the hay that was in my hand, and I was backing up, and I backed all the way up until I got to my bike, which was about, I don't know, 20 yards, 25 yards behind me. And I got on my bike as fast as I could, and I just went to the house as fast as I could. It was still daylight, but the sun had already set by that time. And it was just a strange event. It was enough that it scared me, but again, I didn't hear anything. All I could see was I saw something, and I didn't smell anything. There was nothing rocking back and forth. It was just an eerie vibe. So I tell my folks, and of course, as most parents, oh, you're just mind's playing tricks on your, hun. And I just thought, well, maybe, in my head, well, no, but okay, well, maybe. So that night or the night before, my room was closest. It was on the far end of the house where I could clearly see from my bedroom wall the garden. And we had a vapor light, security light outside my window, maybe 15 yards. And one of my brothers and I shared a bunk bed. And I had the top bunk and he had the lower. Well, this was in the 70s, and my mom was kind of short. It still is. And so our windows were very tall. So the curtain was sheer. There was no window blinds. It was just a curtain rod and a sheer curtain that was on it. So you could kind of see silhouettes from the outside, but my mom was short. So the top of the window, about this much, there was no curtains on it. So I could, from where my bed was at, I could easily turn and I could look outside and look over the top of the curtain. So, and I did that several times through the night when I couldn't sleep. I just turned and the vapor light was out there. So anything, possum, raccoons, things, I could see that. And I like that. And so I just look outside. I could turn on my pillow and just look there outside. So it was either that night or the night after. I'm laying there, and I remember laying on my back, and it was late. It was probably past midnight, and I was woken by hearing something, kind of a low, like this growl. And I thought it was my brother down below me. I thought he was like snoring or something. And I said my brother's name, and then I could hear him. He was breathing heavy, and I thought, he's asleep. Well, is he snoring? And again, I didn't turn. I was just laying on my back looking at the ceiling. And then the next time I heard this, then at that time I realized it was to my right side, which was at the window. And it was this low, just this really low bass growl. And I got so scared because something told me that it wasn't a bear. We had bears in the area, black bears. And I know various parts of Oklahoma have a lot of bears, just a sparse amount of bears here and there. But Eastern Oklahoma, we did have bears, and we had some bear sign in the area. But I thought, what is the likelihood? I remember thinking this as a kid. I'm sitting there, what's the likelihood of a bear growling at the window? There's no food. Bears that's out of their character. There's no scratching or anything like that, like bears do when they're hungry or they want something. They'll scratch, they'll push. I mean, they're just an annoyance, when they want something, but that's not in their nature just to do that. And I wanted to, again, I was about 10. I wanted to turn so bad and take a look. Something told me there was something right there at that window, and it was looking at me. I probably, from the window, from my head to the window, was probably 2 feet or less. And I thought, if I look at this, I can't get that image out of my head. And I don't want to look. I don't want to look. I don't want to look. And that's what I was telling myself. And this went on for about, it seemed to me like an eternity, but I would say it probably went on for about 30 seconds or so. This growling, gurgling, and it scared me really, really bad. I was so shaken. I was frightened. I was so frightened that I continued to shake in bed until my brother that was below me, I woke him up because I was in shock. I was shaking the bed so bad. It was like a violent shock. He said it was like an earthquake because the bed, it was moving. And the bunk beds back in those days was kind of cheesy. They just lifted up and set on the pegs, so they were kind of rickety and they had the slat boards underneath. So it didn't take much to really get the thing going. And I remember I woke him up, and because I was like, I was in the sheets, I was looking straight up, and he said, Lance, are you okay? Because I was still shaking. And I said, and by him doing that and touching me, it just kind of brought me out of it. I was just like, yeah. So I got up. I didn't look at the window yet. I didn't tell him anything. I didn't want to scare him. And I didn't look at the window, and you could always see the light of the vapor light outside going through the curtain. And as I was walking, I was looking at the shadow or the light coming through on the carpet, and I was seeing if there was a silhouette there before I turned around, and I didn't see anything. So then I slowly looked back, and I didn't see anything there. And so I went and got a drink, and I didn't tell my parents because I knew at that point if I told them they wouldn't believe me. And so my brother, he said, "Are you okay? You okay?" I said, "Yeah, I just had a bad nightmare." So I didn't want to really tell him what happened. I just said it was a bad nightmare and I'll be okay. And I was shook up. I had nightmares for a couple of weeks after that, just because I didn't want. And so what I did is I took a nail and I nailed up above the window and I put a blanket. And my mom was like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "It's kind of cold." She goes, "It's cold. It's summer." And I said, "Yeah, well, I was making some stuff up." I didn't really want to tell them because, had I said something, they would have thought, well, you won't get to watch any scary movies anymore. And of course, I really like that. But anyway, that was kind of my experience there. I was frightened at 10 years old, and I know what I heard. So that was my experience as a kid. Again, I didn't think enough at that time to go outside and look for tracks or prints. But I will say this. I went back the following day because I didn't finish my job. My dad asked me, he goes, "Did you get those strawberries finished?" And I said, "No, I made up something." I think I said, "No, I didn't get, I fell or something, Dad. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll finish up." He said, "Well, okay." So I went out there and I looked and I got down in the same spot and I didn't see what I saw previously. I didn't see any silhouette. It was just, I stood in the same spot and I looked and I waited till the evening to try and see if I could get something, am I looking at a stump or something? And I didn't see anything. There was nothing like that. So I knew I had seen something. I just didn't know what. At that time, I don't think Bigfoot had entered my mind or anything, any cryptid. I think it was just in my mind in general, it was a monster. I had enough sense because I had been with my dad hunting since I was 5 years old that I knew I didn't think it was a bear. And I knew it wasn't like a lion because I could tell the sound was up high in that window. It wasn't down below. I know that sounds kind of strange, but I could tell how high the sound was. The windows, we had single pane windows. They weren't like double and triple pane like today and everything. It was a very, very simple house, very simple windows. And so you could really hear things outside quite well. So again, like I said, that was my experience. My dad, he started out as a park ranger, Oklahoma State Park Ranger, and worked his way up through the ranks to become eventually a park manager, which means we moved 3 times through my dad's career before he retired. We lived in Oklahoma State parks. We lived at Greenleaf State Park. We lived at Little Sahara, and finally, my dad retired at Romano State Park. So Greenleaf, like I said, is outside of Bragg's. And so we moved there, and that was kind of cool. We lived in the group camp. So we got to do a lot of cool things. But at Greenleaf, didn't really have any experiences there, although I did have a UFO experience there, but we can say that for another time. But Little Sahara really didn't have any experiences there that I'm aware of. But when we went to Romano's, which is about 5 miles north of Watonga, Oklahoma, it was just it was strange things, and I never connected the dots. I didn't see anything per se. I saw a lot of wildlife. I did a lot of hunting outside the park. You can't hunt in the parks, but you can get permission outside the park. People own private property and you can hunt there. So we did that a lot. But a story that was relayed to me by brothers Bill and Lane, I had left, by that time, I had left going to college, and brother Bill and Lane told me they shared a room, but they weren't in a bunk. Their beds were almost close together, and it faced a window to the west. Was it to the west? Yes, to the west. We lived up on a hill in the state park, and it was a window maybe about 3 foot in height, but about 6 or 7 foot in length. And again, my mom always had these sheer curtains, so when there was a full moon out, if there was anything on the outside, you could easily see a silhouette of. And so brother Bill and both of them some years later shared this with me. And, growing up there, we stayed, I can't tell you how many times we camped outside just with sleeping bags on the ground on the patio out back. We had tents around the house in the summer and in the fall. We just spent a lot of time outside around the house. My dad kept it quite manicured to keep some of the rattlesnakes away and everything, and some of the critters. So we had a really nice, soft green lawn. And so it was perfect for someone wanting to put a tent, or we just put a tarp down on the ground sometimes and get a sleeping bag and just look at the stars. And we were right next to the house. So what harm? It was perfect. And it was quiet. Most of the times it was quiet and it was safe. And we did that numerous times growing up there. But when I left for college, my brothers shared with me that one night, I can't recall the year they said, or excuse me, the season, but they were young. I would say they were probably in middle school, both of them. And I had already been away. So my mom and dad was there. They were sharing a room next door to my parents. And then I think it was still my other brother was in the bedroom that we used to share, but I was gone. And so they were sitting there, and it was around midnight, they said, and they were facing the window, and they were just kind of whispering, kind of calming down. It was late. They were supposed to be in bed a lot sooner, and they were whispering. And then all of a sudden, there's 3 silhouettes. There's a big silhouette, a medium, and a small one. The large silhouette you could see it so clearly. He said you could see this face, you could see hair, the silhouette, you could see hair, and you could see that it had hair all the way down, and it started all the way, and it was hairy. You could see the tufts of hair in the silhouette. that the moon was coming through the light, the light of the moon was coming through the window. So the lead silhouette, you could barely see the head. The medium silhouette, you could see the outline of the face, and you could see the hair. And then the silhouette immediately behind that, you could just barely see the top of the head. It was almost, as they said, dad, mom, and baby Squatch. And they said that they were very close together. They were just very close together and just a nice, even walk. Their heads didn't go up and down or anything, but they were very slow in their movement. And it walked right across their window, and there was no noise. There was no tapping on any window. There was no growling. There was no vocalizations. Nothing. It was just they see the silhouettes. They're talking. They went, what's that? And they watched it both. So Brother Bill got up and he said, I'm going to take a look. They also had a window on the north side of the house. We had 2 pine trees. Now, mind you, we're on top of this hill, and then it goes down into a little ravine and then goes up a hill. And there's nothing on these hills very much. I mean, just rocks and some blue stem grass where the guys can't cut grass because there's a lot of rocks there and cactus. But for the most part, everything is smooth. So had he looked out, you could easily see whatever it was walking north because the moon was out. And he hesitated. He said, I didn't want to look. He said, Lance, I didn't want to look. Lane, he wouldn't look. I was afraid that if I pulled that curtain back, Bill was probably, let's see, I'm 9 years older. So they were probably somewhere in this, I would say 8th grade, somewhere in there. I'm going to say somewhere 12, 13, 14. And so anyway, he didn't pull back the curtain. He was too afraid. And Lane didn't either. And so they told my parents, and well, first of all, after that, they ran into the bedroom where I was at. And Laird was laying down, my other brother, and I was gone. And so they knew that they thought we were playing a joke on them. Now, if someone was playing a joke on you, you would want people to see you. So you would either probably tap on the window, make a noise to get their attention. This did not, it just walked by the window and that was it. So we figured that this was the real deal. The silhouettes were a real deal. And also, while I was out there growing up in the park, I had just odd things. I used to work both at the, I contracted from the state a bait shop, and I would run to work many times early in the morning and back home. And then I'd go to work as a lifeguard. I did that for 9 years. And while I was down at the pool area, it was down in the bottom. It's a real pretty area. And there were several times where I had like, not pine cones, but like tree nuts, hickory nuts, I would be working at the pool and I would pow, and a hickory nut, it hit pretty hard and it would kind of bust the shell open. And I was looking around, like when we would open up or close late at night, we'd only have just a few people opening, and then the majority of the people came, and then we'd have just a few people closing. So I thought somebody had always in my mind was playing a trick on me, but no one ever vocalized anything. Hey, it's me. I never did hear anybody giggle off in the trees. So that happened quite frequently in the summertime. Never chalked it up to anything. Didn't think Bigfoot, anything like that. So we'll go ahead and fast forward a little bit further. So when my brother Lane and Lane were in high school, Lane, I think, was a senior, and he had a job working at the park in the maintenance area with a friend that had already graduated high school a few years. And So after work, they were going to go have a couple beers. They were going to go into town, and then they were going to drive west of Watauga. And there was a well-known party area that everybody went. I had never gone there before, but I think they had gone. And several high schools, a lot of people have over the years. And I guess you have to cross the bridge, and then you go back in this back slough, and there's like a creek, and it opens up into a sandy area, and that's why it was popular. Sand, you could build a bonfire, whatever. What my brother was telling me. So him and his buddy had parked their, they had backed their truck in, and the creek was back behind the truck, maybe about 20 yards, or like maybe 15 yards. Anyway, there was no trees right there. It was just, it goes sandy river bank, and then it just goes right into the river. But up further and down further, there was the farmers don't cut the trees close to the creek. It's kind of hard to get in there, so they just leave those alone. But then they'll plow the fields for winter wheat and whatnot. So our first show that we had was an interview with my brother Lane and what happened. But basically, what had happened is that they were just getting settled in. They had their rod and reels and stuff in the back of the truck. They were just getting open. They were getting ready to get a beer. My brother had just popped a beer open. And about that time, he looked up, and he was looking into the field, and there was winter wheat this was in the fall. So the winter wheat was about, I guess about 3 inches. So it was a wide open field. And he was looking out there in front, and he noticed something was running out in front. It was at a good clip, and it was running right in front of them, but out about 200 yards. And he looked at that, and he didn't know what it was at first. He thought it was like an Appaloosa horse. He said it was so fluid-like, and the hair was just gliding behind it. He said it looked like a ghost because of how fluid it was. It was moving at a good clip, but its head wasn't bopping up and down. It was just like it was floating on the surface, and the hair was coming off of it, and it was a gray white. And so he told his buddy, he said, hey, follow my finger. What is that? And they were pointing out in the field. My brother Lane was tracking it right out in front of him. And he said, yeah. I don't know. So they looked at it, and it disappeared on the side of the trees where the creek was. And the trees from the creek, it was probably about 5 yards of trees on each side of the creek that, again, like I said, the farmers don't cut. They just use them as a windbreak. And again, this is what my brother Lane was saying. And so they had their windows down, and it kind of freaked his buddy out. And he says, maybe we should go. And he goes, no, let's don't go. Let's don't go. So they could hear it in the trees, and it began to break limbs and was getting closer. And mind you, when it disappeared in the trees, it was probably about 200 yards. And you could hear that it was getting notably closer. And it sounded like, my brother said, it sounded like baseball bats being broke. Pow, pouch. And they're both like big-eyed. And his buddy said, I think we need to leave. And Lane goes, no, let's just wait, see what this is. It's going to step out. I want to see if it steps out behind us. So Lane couldn't, where they were sitting, he could see behind him in the rear view mirror. He sat on the passenger side. His buddy could see in the rear view, but he also had a headache rack in the back of the truck right there. It's got those louvers. So he had a cigarette, and he was turned looking like this. And they could hear, because he had his window down, and they were in I think an old Ford truck 150. And, the beds on those are kind of light. So you got to weigh them down in the winter so you don't slide around on the road or the dirt roads. So this popping and snapping, Lane said, went on for about, and it was getting closer. He said, about 30 seconds, somewhere in there, to the point where there was nothing. It was just silent. And they waited, and the sun had set, so it was in that twilight. But there was still enough light to determine if something would step out, Lane said. Then Lane was looking in the side mirror and it stepped out. It came out and it sloped down the bank, and it was near the water's edge. He could tell just by the where it was standing, because all he could see was about knee height and up. And he saw it, and it didn't make any sounds. It just started swaying back and forth like this, and its arms were down by its side, and it was just swaying. And the guys were like, "What the hell is that?" And Lane said his buddy was just smoking like this, shaking, looking through the headache rack. He said, "We got to go." Lane goes, "Just wait. I got to see this." And Lane said, "Do you still have that 357 back under your seat?" And he said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Give it to me. I don't want you to shoot me." And so he put one in the chamber. And mind you, no one had had a drink of beer yet, Lane said. He was scared. So Lane just got this feeling that something's not right. So Lane poured his beer out, and he took the bottle upside down and broke it over the mirror. So he had a jagged bottle. And he said, "Hey, buddy," he said, "don't be jacking around with us." He said, "We're just here to fish, and we'll leave, nothing. This silhouette was just still going back and forth. No vocalizations. There was no smells. By this time, it was the moon had come out a little bit, and so it was really one of those moonlit nights again. And this went on. Lane vocalizing, "Hey, stop jacking with us." And they were getting more concerned because Lane had pointed a gun. He said, "Hey, I'll use this if you try to, attack us or something." Nothing. So I think this went on for maybe about a minute. It seemed like forever, is what Lane said. And then all of a sudden, it started making an advancement toward them. And then that's when Lane told his buddy, he said, "Start the truck, start the truck." So he was having a problem starting the truck, of course. And he was pumping the gas, finally got it started. And Lane said it was on him like that quick. They spun out of there. And again, the rear end of those trucks are so light, their gear just fell out, and they're spinning because they got to go around a corner and spin. They lost their gear. And about that time, Lane was still hanging out the window with the broken glass bottle, and he had his gun. It was like this. And he's hanging out from the waist over out the passenger side doing this. And he doesn't know what it is. Eddie doesn't know what it is. He's just saying, "What is it? What is it? What is it?" He said, "Just get us out of here." So when they went around the corner, his buddy hit the brake lights to try and not miss that there was a gate there. And so he hit the brake, and the brake lights brightened up the back. And when it did that, Lane was still hanging out the side, and he could see the reflectivity of the red brake lights on the face. He said that he estimated somewhere around 8 foot in height. It was a gray white. It had a real shiny sheen to it when it was in the moonlight. He said he definitely could see the hand was reaching out like this, like it was going to reach out and trying to grab the bumper. And so he saw digits, he saw a hand, he could see that the brow had that overhanging brow. It had a flattened nose. It had a very thin mouth. The eyes were kind of sunk back, but they were coal. It was just black coal. He said it was massive. It was just, he was looking, when it came out of the bottom and was chasing him, he was looking up at it like this, and he had the gun. I asked him how come, he was pointing the gun, it was loaded, but how come he didn't fire? Or, not that I'm advocating that. He just said, "I don't know. Something told me this is a guy." There was too many features on it that made it look human. I didn't know. I don't even know if it would have helped if I'd have fired. It was so massive. I was so scared. I didn't want to kill somebody, but I didn't know. In my mind, I was battling this shoot, don't shoot. And yet at the same time, I was like, what the hell am I looking at? Is what Lane was saying. So they went down this dirt road, dust was flying. His buddy punched it. Finally the tires got caught up and they went down this dirt road and they were just fishtailing. And Lane, they were going so fast. Eddie was kind of shook up and he just told Lane, well, Lane told his buddy, he said, "You got to slow down. You're going to kill us." So he yelled it and finally said, "You're going to kill us if you don't slow down." And finally, they slowed down before they hit the highway. And they stopped right there before they got on the highway. And they both were like, what was that? And Lane says, Lane says, "They're real. They're real. I can't believe they're real." And his friend goes, "What's real?" He goes, "Sasquatch. It's real. It's a real thing. I had no idea." And so Lane wanted to go back. He said, "Let's go back." And his buddy said, "You're out of your mind." He said, we're in a truck. We got this gun. We've got another light. Let's go back. Got to go get our gear and stuff. And the guy goes, "You can have it. I am not going. This is my truck. And if you want to go back, you take your own damn car. I am not going back." And he hasn't been back since. It freaked him out. And I had an opportunity to chat with him years later, very briefly, and asked him about it. And he said, "You never know how someone's going to act when they're really shook up and had a trauma." And Lane said he was notably shook up. And so I talked to him and he said, "Yeah, I remember that." He said, "Man, I don't want to experience that again. I don't know what that was, but if that was a Bigfoot, then that's what it was then, because it was after us." And I was scared, man. That thing was massive, and I thought it was gonna get us. So he was pleasant to at least cooperate in some communication, but you could tell he didn't want to go in depth with it. Lane, on the other hand, it changed his life. And I think Lane told me it took about 2 years before he opened up to share it to all of us. So with my experience and with both Bill and Lane's experience, and then we had experiences at deer camp. We never had anything. We just had odd things happen, different sounds. Never chalked it up to anything other than just being weird. But after the experience with Lane, and he told us, I had to hear the story over and over and over again. And after that, I thought, maybe this is a good opportunity for us to just sit down and talk about some of the odd things that's happened to us over the years, and see if we can connect any dots. And that was the kind of the foundation, really, of creating the show in 2017. And of course, since then, there's been lots of people that have corroborated those very things, including yourself with your encounter. But that's kind of the background that kind of started us on this quest. And everything that I spoke about, like I said, took place in Oklahoma. So that was pretty much the experiences of myself and my brothers that we had encountered or experienced.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing, Lance. And if anybody wants to check it out, Lance has a channel called Monster 911. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is Monster 911.
Okay. Yeah, and he's dedicated towards sharing the truth about the cryptid phenomenon, so check it out.
Yeah, I appreciate that. When I started the show, I always felt that it was a way that we really started it as a means, as therapy for ourselves. I know that sounds kind of silly, but it was really therapy, just to talk about a little bit about what we had experienced and odd things, and just open dialogue, between us brothers. And then as it rolled around, I thought, if there's other people out there, even though email was popular, I thought, I bet you there's some whole timers out there and some people that's really got some incredible stories. So that's when I came up with the toll-free number. And when we had that toll-free number and aired it in 2017, I should have opened up a call center. I had like 20, 25 calls a day. And so I got backlogged on the calls real fast. but they were coming from all over. So, that really validated a lot of what we had experienced and many others. And even though we were at that time, we were Cryptid Brothers Investigations of Oklahoma, we were taking calls from all over the place and even out of the country. And so that just validated with the backgrounds, so many backgrounds, so many different ages of people, that this is more than a phenomenon. This is the real deal. And then, of course, in experiencing and doing the interviews, I learned through by fire, you could say, that there are other people trying to subdue this truth. And they are very real. I learned a lot about them, and that's kind of what I'm writing about right now. These
Yeah.
people, they call them the MIBs, but I don't like that word because, but everybody knows what we're talking about when we do use that term.
Hmm. And you don't have to say it on the show, but you've had some run-ins with the people who try to suppress this information.
Yes, yeah, directly and indirectly. I'll just say that I'm writing about it right now in such a way that can help other people, um, give them some background, some foreground, some knowledge. So if they have an experience, whether Bigfoot related or not, it can be just say cryptid related. The book kind of walks a person through and takes them through what to do, what not to do, how to behave, what to say, what not to say, all those things. But yes, directly and indirectly, and both of which were just purely, I say, accident. I wasn't expecting anything, it just happened. So I wasn't fully prepared, but I talk about it in the book.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get that book for sure.
I hope I want it to be an education, like a field guide, more than anything, because I don't know anyone really talking about some of the things I'll be writing about. And it's very important, I think, because it's part of the coping process.
Yeah, that's a very unique topic, and I'd like to read some information on that.
Absolutely. In fact, I was just communicating with someone literally 2 minutes ago on that very thing that's going on right now on their property. And
Yeah.
so I have people calling me, hey, Lance, is this weird or what? I've got helicopters flying over and the lights are on. Then when I stepped out, the helicopter light shut off, yet I can hear it flying around still. Is that strange? No, it's not. And I go in, I tell them why it's not. It's not that I have anybody on the inside working with me, or I have secret documents. I don't, but I have enough experience through a lot of people that have contacted me, and I've done a lot of research on this with other channels, and even in the UFO community. It's the same. They're having the same issue and have for decades. It's just that right now, what was it, 2021, when the government finally disclosed the the UFOs are real. Except the problem that right now they're trying to call it unidentified flying phenomenon, but I don't like that, because you're taken away from the realness that it is a flying object. So I prefer to use UFO rather than UAP. So, but
Hmm.
that's for another topic. But yeah, I enjoy talking about it because I really want to educate people and help them understand that they're not crazy. What they're seeing is what they're seeing, but that there are people up to no good that are doing things, I'll just say it, illegally, that they shouldn't be doing, and they have the full authority and the backing and the budget to do it. And it's really hard for us to get a chance to know what happened, or people won't connect the dots. So I do talk about some real eyewitness accounts that had happened with these MIBs and myself. And these are directly coming from the eyewitness, first person, what happened after they called me, prior to calling me, and how their life has changed, and what continues to go on even months or years after the incident.
Yeah.
So you just got to be careful with these folks. They don't like anyone to talk about them. They don't like you to follow a paper trail. They don't like you taking pictures of these creatures. They don't like you taking pictures of them, their cars, their helicopters. They are real. I know that there's some podcast folks out there that believe that this is not. It is 100% real. It's better to acknowledge something than to pretend they don't exist, but they do. And so I've spent a lot of time on investigating these people. Um, there's just not a lot um, available for Joe Q Citizen to look up. You know, how do you do research on something that is so above top secret that people at DC have no clue? And it gets in. I won't go in too deep, but I'll just say it goes really way above the top, and it goes really, really deep. And it's just part of that black budget and different operations that are going on. And again, the UFO community have experienced this for years and years and years as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've seen them erase a few people from the scene as far as like InfoWars and different channels. They just completely wipe them. So,
Well,
I mean,
it sounds very fictional. I
mhm.
understand how it sounds. I understand how it looks because people could say, come on, Lance. And I'll say this, I'll say, hey, I understand what it sounds like. I totally get it. I'm a guy of science. I've been in healthcare for 25 years. I've taken all the sciences and chemistries. I have a degree in chemistry, green biology. I studied all that. So I'm heavily into the sciences, you know, and the scientific method. So when I say I found out by accident, things just were not adding up, or rather, they added up real fast. And I'm like, what just happened? How come my computer's being messed with? How come my data's gone? And I was asking myself questions and trying to find out what is happening. And I started just connecting the dots slowly, but in some instances very quickly. And so they are very real people. They like to cover their tracks extremely well. And the show that really, where I connected the dots step by step because I knew what was going to happen. And as I said, what was going to happen, the eyewitness verified what I said was going to happen. And he would come back to me that same day or the day after and said, how did you know? That's exactly what they said. That's exactly what they did. And that would be the show that was the Ohio Bigfoot and Fed cover up. That incident took place 3 days after that event that the Bigfoot attacked the cousin. So it was still so fresh and so raw. And you can hear it in his voice because I left. That's the only show that I've ever done where I left the initial recording as the intro to the show. So you can hear it in his voice. And so we stayed in contact every day for like 2 weeks. Well, some problem. I mean, in staying in contact for 2 weeks, we ended up becoming monitored by these people. And the guy ultimately, they closed his bank account, which him and his wife had jointly. They closed the savings account. He lost his home. He lost his truck. Ultimately, he lost his job that he had been at for 15 years. His boss said, don't, he went to work and his boss said, I need to call you into the office. And they didn't accuse him of anything. I asked him, I'm sorry, I have to release you. He never knew what he was released for. The cousin and him wanted to go to the radio station, a small radio station, and talk about it. They shut the electricity down on the radio station and talked to the station manager. And the station manager said, you got to leave. It's a whole series of events, of very strange events that transpired after that. That I That's another book I'm going to write in the future, is just everything that occurred during that event. It's incredible. But that's where I became really sharpened on these people and how they get military personnel involved, how they get police personnel, game warden personnel involved, rangers involved, depending on the state. You know, you got Texas Rangers, and then there's other types of game wardens and game rangers, of course, but they were involved as well. So I became really attuned to how they all fit in the picture of who gets precedent, who talks, and all that. So that was really an educational one for me, and helping this guy through. We still stay in contact to this day. That was in 2017, October 2017.
Yeah. So the threat is real.
It is. It's very real. So, you know, when someone says, hey, I'm going to go shoot one of these Bigfoot and then I'm going to drive it to Walmart, show everybody, and get my $1 million. Well, I hate to, you know, be a blow your party there, but that's not going to work that way. Number one, if you're going to have more problems just if you want to intentionally shoot one. I would never intentionally shoot one. I would have to be in such a position where I absolutely feared for my life before I shot something, any cryptid, where I felt backed into a corner. I have no one else to support me with firepower or anything like that. I would say most of the time you're going to be able to talk your way out of it or move your way out of it. That's just my opinion. Every situation is going to be different. But to shoot one and to be able to leave that scene, not having others to, lack of a better word, gang up on you, that was a family member. So that's the first problem. You're going to have to get over that hurdle. And it's just not going to work the way people say. These creatures are highly intelligent. They're highly mobile. They are highly acute to their senses, whether it's vision, they can see at night probably as clearly as we can see in the day. Their auditory, their keen, their sensory is highly attuned to the outdoors. Whereas you and I, we require night vision, sense, camo. You know, they don't need any of that. So they're the masters of the woods when we're out in the woods. They know they can smell us for miles. They can see us. They can hear us. So to be able to say that, that's just not going to happen that way. And then say you get past that hurdle. Say you're able to somehow get out of the woods with a Bigfoot, a body of a Bigfoot. That's just the start of your problems. Because if this other agency finds out you have shot one like that, they're going to make sure you're going to be ridiculed so bad and labeled. They can label you with anything. They're going to, you know, they could put on your phone, they can add pictures that never existed. They could call you a child molester. They can call you a tax evasion. They can see it's not the truth that matters to them. It's the perception. If they can give the perception out to the public that you're a goofball, that you didn't pay your taxes or whatever, it doesn't matter to them. They'll ruin people's lives and go sleep like a baby. That's what they're paid to do, period. They don't care if they destroy your life, if your wife left you, if you lost your house and your job. Why do they do all that? You have to think. Why does someone go to those links to do that? Because they need to shut the chatter down. If you take away someone's money and the way to make money and fracture their family in such a way, fraction their job and their friends, then they don't get their voice out a lot. So now you're worried about money and you're not worried about saying what you saw. So there's a lot of psychological warfare that's going on with these people, and it's intentional. So it's not the truth that matters. It's the perception of truth on how they want to portray you in social media or whatever they do to you. Again, they're not your friend and they don't care. They're ruthless. So, I mean, and I go about that and talk about in the book as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hopefully people have the chance to start whacking them like rabbits. So
Yeah. Um, that would be, and I'm always kind of this dichotomy. I'm always, when someone says, what should I do, Lance? What, should I shoot one? Should I not? I'm like, well, I don't think you should just go pick in a fight.
yeah.
That's the first thing. But here's the thing. If someone asks me, do I think they're responsible for human abductions? I
Mhm.
do. I really do. Um, I believe there's too much of a coincidence for them not to be a part of these abductions. I think they're very thoughtful on who they abduct. I think they can recognize frailties or disabilities. Again, they're very, very, very keen in the woods. That's their play. That's their background. That's their home base, so to speak. So they know it very well, and they're very good observers. So they can observe and seeing where your disability is. Can you hear very well? Can you move well? Do you need a cane? Are you old? Are you not? Are you by yourself? Are you a male? Are you a female? Do you have a gun? No gun. You're very good about that. Now, I'm not saying they know those terms, but
Mhm.
they know what those objects are. So, I know that's a big debate on shoot, don't shoot, but I'm feeling, my feeling is this. It's kind of like Wiley's. You carry a gun to protect yourself, but Wiley would say if they start doing the funky monkey, it's time to protect yourself and the people that are with you.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You gotta be safe, and you never can predict where, when, how many, or how aggressive one's going to be toward you or your friends. So that's why, when we go investigate, I don't have my hand on my pistol. I don't even brandish anymore. You can't see it on my side. It's up inside my clothing. Um, because I want to see first or capture on video more. I mean, that's our biggest goal, capture on video. And
Mhm.
then I think if you have something in your hand like that, any kind of weapon, or they'll pick up on that, and they're not going to show themselves. So that's kind of how we do it now. And then we do our nighttime investigations a little bit different, depending on where we're at. Western Oklahoma, we all stay together, and we need a high vantage point. So we get in the bed of a truck, and then we'll go down the roads at night. One person or two people in the bed of a truck, and then the others are driving. But that way, it gives us a vantage point off that we can see, because your blue stem grasses and your tumbleweeds out there, they get kind of high, and you get these low bottoms. So by getting in the back of the truck, you can kind of see better. But anyway, yeah, it's a controversial thing. Shoot, don't shoot. But hey, if something is coming at you, regardless if it's a Bigfoot, a wolf, um, a rogue dog, I'm all about protecting yourself. You got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was going to write down some questions about the encounters that you had, but you explained everything in vivid detail that I don't think I have to ask any questions.
Yeah, like I said, the biggest detail, really, with the experiences, for me, it was just I didn't see any eyes. I saw a silhouette. I didn't hear anything. That's when I was 10, but I did hear vocalizations at my window, and it was just, to me, going back. I actually went back years later to listen to a lot of black bear grunts and sounds black bears use and things, and this didn't sound anything like that. It was far from it. With Lane and his buddy, he gave pretty good detail on what he saw, especially that brake light reflective in the face. It was pretty scary.
Mhm.
And so, that was something that really set him. It changed his life. Uh, but my brother Lane was like us. Instead of changing your life and being closed up, it really opened us up. And like many people that you hear too, when you have an experience like this, you'll find someone either doesn't want to talk about it, um, they're willing to share a little bit, but they don't want to share too much. They
Mhm.
just don't tell many people, or they're just obsessed with it. and that's what we just became obsessed with it. And the more that I started having people um, share on the channel, I realized that I could help them, being with my background, and I did a lot of research in that, and that's for another book. Did some research on that and about how to cope with these encounters, because I always say, when we have to keep in mind that when people have these encounters, it happens to a real person, just like me and you. You got a family, you work hard, and you're paying your bills, getting groceries, going to soccer games, and then when you have something like this that you didn't plan on seeing, that just kind of hits you out of nowhere, not literally but figuratively, it really can shake up your life and turn your world upside down. And a lot of people that want to have these encounters, they really don't know what they're asking. It's quite traumatic emotionally, and it can really bleed into your relationships, job performance, and a whole host of other things I found out. So it's a very important topic, and I'm passionate about to try and help these folks.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And do you want to share the number here
Oh
on the
yeah, I
channel?
appreciate that. So the toll-free number, it is a toll-free. I know it may be difficult out of the country, but it's 1-866-306-8085, and that's toll-free. Again, 866-306-8085. And we originally, when we did the number, it was toward creatures that are on 2 or 4 legs, but now we've kind of expanded it to still doing that, but now we've expanded it open to UFO sightings, which we have some coming. We're going to go out and reenact what happened to Wiley Day with UFO sighting that he had some years ago. And also, I've opened it up to things that are going on in someone's home, more spiritual related. Uh, you could say EVPs or spirit related in someone's home, whether it be haunting or anything like that. Again, that's another experience for another time, but I've had my interesting experiences usually by accident. As you're going out doing nighttime investigations, something happens, and then that leads you on another quest. But the only way to really experience anything is just boots on the ground, day or night. And it's really opened my eyes up. Prior to this show, starting the show in 2017, I realized how closed-minded I was, and I think our biases naturally get in the way, because we're always comparing it to what we know and don't know. And that never does that, and everybody knows that Bigfoots do this, or they'll believe in Bigfoot but not UFOs. And I've come to realize that our biases tend to keep us really subjected, or in our mind imprisoned, from learning and being really just listening to people. Because if you listen, you're going to learn something if you remain a student and coachable. And I've learned that now in my mid 50s more so than ever. Don't let my bias get in the way. Be respectful, listen to what the person has to say, because I wasn't there, and maybe I can learn something if you just listen. And that's the thing that I've learned the most here in the last few years.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm still struggling with that and learning it myself. I got a long way to go.
Well, I think we all do. I think professions do help in some regard. I've treated thousands of people. I've asked a lot of questions, and when you listen to someone, it's almost like diagnosing. Whether it's to find out how a car can run better, you diagnose a car. To find out what's going on with the electrical problem at your house, you got to diagnose what that is, or computer problem. But with a person, it's a lot more complex. And so you're dealing with past experiences, and over the years, have a few people maybe pulled a fast one on me. Yeah, I think it's happened a couple times, I'm willing to say. I know we had one this past year, and I let everybody know about it too as soon as I found out. But for the most part, 99% of the people that I've interviewed has truly had something happen. And I try to, as you do and many others that have shows, really try to listen, because I think we can glean and understand something that is not taught in schools, It's not taught at universities. We have to, excuse me, we have to self-educate ourselves through books, shows, movies, and things like that.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'm always remaining a student of learning and to be open to um, new things when I'm out in the field, new concepts, new pieces of equipment to gain better access to what I'm hearing. Um, and yeah, just see where it takes me because I never know where it's
Yeah.
going to take me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wish you the best of luck with the channel. And I thank you for coming on Sasquatch Theory and sharing your experiences with everyone.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Miguel. I appreciate you so much. And I think your channel is doing great. And I think if we had more podcasters like yourself and out there, I think we could really spread the word. Just keep spreading the word, because the way I always say it, the amount of people that's sharing on all these podcasts with the creepy crawlies that are out there, I think that's just a fraction of the people that are sharing. I think that there are so many people in certain circles that keep their experiences tight to their chest. They don't want to be ridiculed or embarrassed, and they just keep it really tight within certain circles. A couple people know, or these dark agents, if you will, have gotten a hold of them already and threatened them. So they will never share until which time, maybe years down the road. And I've had a couple of those. So, I just think that what we hear from people experiences is just a fraction of the thousands upon thousands of people that's had close encounters, distant encounters of these creatures.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know with myself, I only share like a fraction of what's happened. Like I have a lot of UFO and paranormal activity, but it didn't happen with the Bigfoot stuff, but I try not to mix it all together, but I feel like I need to share that eventually, so
Yeah,
I
and
understand.
yeah, and that's the way I was at the very beginning. I totally concur with that. But what I found out is that in many ways it's all connected. It really is. Um, and so that's why I just changed it. And I thought, I'm just going to include it because I've run into the paranormal, um, spirit related while investigating Bigfoot. And so
Mhm.
that caught my attention. And then while we were doing that, there was some UFO that we couldn't explain while we were doing that. So you just never know. But I totally get it. I totally get it. You
Yeah.
don't want to confuse the audience too much sometimes. Like, wait a minute, what kind of channel is this? But you
Mhm.
just never know anymore. And so I think that's why I'm just kind of taking the channel and just kind of doing some different things with it.
I think that's good just because you're going to be open-minded and you're going to be connecting more dots than somebody that's closing it off and pushing it off to the side.
Absolutely. And someone that was really good at this, God rest his soul, was Brenton Solon. He had just a collection of different subjects matters and people, just a really good guy. I knew him. I met him online. I didn't meet him face to face, but I think we met about 2018, 19. And so we stayed in contact with each other, but he was really good at that. I think back now, and there were some others that were like that too, but Brenton had, a larger audience, I think, than most. But yeah, I think it's you never know what you're going to see or experience, and so I like to just take those and let the people see kind of what I'm seeing at that moment and how I think it's related or not. So just kind of record it as it comes and deliver it as it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe somebody right now is watching that will have a Bigfoot or cryptid encounter in the future, and maybe this will help them.
Yeah, and that's why I tell people if you just allow 1% of your mind to be open and just hear the words that we say, and it's okay if you hear this and you go, "That's a bunch of hooey fooey." I get it. I was once there. I totally get it. Um, but if you at least hear a little bit of what we say, and then if and when, heaven forbid, but if and when you have an experience, you can recall that back to say, "Wait a minute. those guys spoke about this. I need to investigate more. And then that's all I want people to do, is at least be open-minded about it. Um, that way, if you do have an experience, you'll know what to do and what not to do.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. All right, Lance. Well, I think that pretty well covers your story and your channel and your
Okay.
mission.
Well, I appreciate you getting back with me and asking me to do an interview.
Yeah, and it was a pleasure to have you on the show, and you did a great job.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. And you know what? I would like to sometime. I think you spoke about this. I think it'd be a great idea for you and I to get together. Maybe not this year, but maybe in the next year, and do a couple of shows together.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Just go out, stay. I've got a lot of places we can go out to. People are having issues, and we can stay the night and do some a lot of equipment. Just kind of set up a nerve center and just stay out. 2, 3, 4 nights.
Yeah, it'd be cool to have some type of Bigfoot Expo out in the woods and just to get to see what everybody's using, and it'd be cool to put it all together. I know I got some techniques that I can show you with the audio recorders and just different devices that I got, and I'm sure you use different devices yourself that are unique.
Yeah, I had some made for us. I was very happy about that. And then we've kind of done our own little parabolic ear things that I don't want to say they're complicated. They're not. You just have to think it up and then do it. But it made sense to me. But I've got some different techniques for point cast, things like that I think it'd be good to share. I'm always willing to pick up something that's either better, faster, lighter, especially when you're taking into the field. You want things light.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, yeah, that sounds great. I'd love to do that sometime.
Yeah, and we're not too far from each other, so that's good.
No, I think that'd be great. We'll just stay in contact with each other, and I'll share. Who knows? Maybe we start it before spring. I think it'd be a good time
Yeah.
while the leaves are off the ground still and the snakes are not out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we'll stay in contact then, Miguel, on that one.
All right, Lance, that sounds good, and I'll let you go for now, and I appreciate you being on the show, man.
I appreciate you too, and you have a great evening.
Yeah, you too. Have a good one.
All right, brother. Take care.
Yep. Take care. Bye.
Bye.